I call this meeting of the Constitutional Convention to order and recognize the delegate from Connecticut, Cyrus Hancock Wolf.
Of course you recognize me. We rode down together, man. Thank you, my fellow delegates. And how about this Philadelphia, huh? I'd come here just for the cream cheese. And speaking of cheese, some of you are starting to smell a little ripe, especially a couple of guys who rode up from Orkney, Carolina. Okay, they do have baths here. I mean, this is a pretty small room, you know. But I kid.
Does the delegate have anything of substance to say?
Substance? Well, I think we should mention parking. I mean, shouldn't there be a right to free parking? Maybe it doesn't seem like a big deal right now, but projecting out, it's totally a hassle if you have to drive somewhere and have to pay for parking.
I move to table that one.
All right, well, how about spoilers? Are we dealing with that in this Constitution? I mean, how do you pursue happiness if somebody's telling you Liam Neeson shoots the guy in the sweater and gets his kid back? Or worse, telling you the girlfriend in the crying game has a...
That is enough. This is meant to be the Constitution of a great new nation. It is not meant to deal with popular entertainments.
Can we at least talk about my proposal to write the Constitution with glitter pens? People are going to be looking at this for centuries, and, you know, it would be kind of nice if it were all colorful and sparkly.
That is enough from you, Delegate Wolf. Simply introduce the show.
All right, fine. Two guys named Colin are going to talk about the Constitution. And now he says there's an implied right to get jiggy with it. Colin McEnroe.
What we have for you here is a show featuring me talking to Colin Quinn. That's the whole show. It's just an interview with two people named Colin talking back and forth, mainly about the Constitution. The one thing I want to tell you before we go into this, we recorded the interview yesterday. So, first of all, don't call in because there will be no one there to answer the phone, and Colin Quinn will have gone on to do other things. Also, we just had a very odd studio-to-studio connection. We don't really know what happened, but you're going to hear some squeaks and clicks and pops. Do not adjust your radio. Do not imagine that you're going through a tunnel or static is afflicting you or something like that. That's actually, it's originating on our end. We hope it's not too annoying to you, but because there's a lot to enjoy in this interview. Colin Quinn is a really interesting guy. So without further ado, here's the conversation I had yesterday with Colin Quinn. Colin Quinn is going to be at the Infinity Bistro and Hall in Norfolk, or Hall and Bistro in Norfolk, Connecticut. It's a great place. I've been there before, many times, actually. He's returning to stage in Colin Quinn Unconstitutional, where he tackles 226 years of American constitutional calamities in 70 minutes. Colin Quinn is with us right now from studios in New York City. First of all, welcome to our show, Colin Quinn.
Thanks, Colin.
It's going to be very confusing with us calling each other Colin the whole time. But
I know, but what can we do?
Exactly.
It's not our fault.
Yeah, it's not our fault, exactly. So let's begin with the Constitution. First of all, I want to make myself available to you because I know this is sort of part of your 13 Colonies tour. And if you need Connecticut-specific information about the Constitution, I am a trove of that. But we'll come to that.
You are?
I am a trove of Connecticut-specific, formally classified as a trove. Let's begin with the Constitution itself. Why were you attracted to this? How did you decide the Constitution might conceivably be funny?
Well, I'm glad you used the word attracted because I literally was sexually attracted to the whole idea of liberty. No, I mean, I wasn't attracted to it. That was the problem. The problem was everybody was always people on the left and the right. Mm-hmm. Everybody would argue about everything in this country. Nobody ever had a bad word to say about the Constitution. You know what I mean? So I was like, wow, how come I don't get it? How come I don't see what's so great about it? So then I started looking into it.
And do we have a great Constitution or not?
No. It's good, though. It's definitely the best. Put it this way, it was definitely nobody's come up with anything better so far. Well, and I mean, that was a long time ago.
Although, you know, I've been doing some reading to prepare for this interview, and it turns out that
damn it.
I know, it's terrible.
No, nothing.
It's the worst possible thing I could do to you. But it turns out that our Constitution isn't as popular as it used to be elsewhere in the world, and when other countries get ready to make new constitutions, which, by the way, other countries do a lot. In other words, I think the average length of a constitution is around 20 years, and then countries typically throw them out. And so, for example, Canada's new Charter of Rights and Freedoms was adopted in 1982 and actually is a lot more popular than our Constitution. Other countries, when they're looking for a constitution, something to model their new one on, they don't pick ours anymore. We're like AOL. We used to be cool.
Well, first of all, Canada, until 1982, they were under some kind of British law, right? So, I mean,
right.
For them, that was their first time to really break free.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada is interesting. I use them in the show a lot because they're like it's such a great petri dish to look at them and us. These two countries that were the same size, basically the same time of history as far as coming to this country, and how they turn out so differently, attitude and personality wise, is based on the Constitution.
Canada's Constitution, just for example, has in it, let's see, it guarantees equal rights for women and disabled people, allows affirmative action, requires that those arrested be informed of their rights. It's got rights that we don't have in our Constitution.
Right. Well, it's a Bill of Rights. But once again, they wouldn't have even thought of any of that if we hadn't had ours.
So we're sort of the template for other people's.
They have an add-on, and then suddenly, we're idiots.
I also read that our Supreme Court is no longer cited internationally by other countries. That other Supreme Courts, as a basis for precedent in other countries, are becoming more fashionable than our Supreme Court. But I know you have doubts about the Supreme Court anyway, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Supreme Court is kind of like a lifetime job is really a weird thing to give anybody, and I mean, we all see how well it's worked out with the college football coaches, and so I mean, it's just a strange thing, and you're studying 4 pages basically for the rest of your life every day from 9 to 5. So there's going to be problems,
4 pages, and, 4 pages being the U.S. Constitution, right?
The Constitution, yeah.
Although it depends on the font, right? I mean, I think in Comic Sans it's actually a longer Constitution.
Lucinda.
Yeah, do it in Lucinda.
Yeah, the Supreme Court, even they kind of talk about it a little bit, how it's a little bit strange that they came up with that one. But, I mean, I can understand people not using our Supreme Court. But like I said, even the fact that we don't have these conventions every once in a while is insane to me, just to kind of see how things go. Even if you didn't change anything in the Constitution, taking the temperature for a couple of weeks every few years, I don't know why that would be so unheard of,
I think it's a great idea.
I do know why.
Yeah. But how would you pick who was in the convention? I mean, how would you decide, if you were going to just let's say every 20 years we get together, we take the temperature of the Constitution. How's it working out these days? The first thing you'd have is this enormous fight over who was going to be at that convention.
That's correct. Yeah. That's the problem, is everything's an enormous fight now.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem. When you set up a society where everybody gets a say, one of the things that happens is gridlock. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. There's no way around that, really. These enormous fights, they have to be if you want to have a society where everybody, if you say this is a democracy, everybody participates in a democracy, this is what it looks like,
Maybe retuning the Constitution should be more like jury duty. You should just get something in the mail that says, we need you for 2 weeks in Arkansas. And just the average people would do it.
That's really a good idea. That's not a bad idea. Or how about this? You do all the constitutional scholars, Now, you might say, I don't want anybody that calls himself a constitutional scholar involved too heavily in this. It's a little strange. But all the constitutional scholars get put in like a lottery, and then you pick out of there.
Well, actually, there are some constitutional scholars, for example, Sanford Levinson at the University of Texas, who does advocate a new constitution, or new constitutional convention, too. He says there is such ridiculous veneration attached to the U.S. Constitution that almost nobody takes amendment as a serious possibility. So he says, just try it once in a while, exactly what you're proposing. But I think we want regular people. I want regular people who have to live under the Constitution, not scholars.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, what about you have to write a letter like the little kids used to write a letter why their school should get you. How you've been affected by the Second Amendment, how you've been affected by the Article 4, you know what I mean? Just all that.
So, yeah, at least one person at the Constitutional Convention should have done prison time.
Exactly. But it's all corruption anyway, because look at Sundance Film Festival. I mean, that's what we're talking about, basically. Except Sundance, do you think it's the best films that get in? No, it's the people that, you got to have connections to probably get even seen. And then you have to be on the right subject. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of things that go on.
This is the first time I've really tried to make a cerebral connection between the Constitutional Convention and the Sundance Film Festival. So I'm not with you stride for stride yet. But
no, they're just 2 bones of contention in my life. Even though I've never done it, I've never made a Sundance film. I still can get bitter about them.
Yeah, I think
not picking the film I've never made.
Right, I think you've been rejected by them anyway, even though you haven't submitted anything to them.
I would have been if I had, yeah.
You can feel rejected on a preemptive basis.
Yeah.
We're talking to Colin Quinn right now. His show's called Colin Quinn Unconstitutional. That's the right name of the show, right? It has your name in it, right?
Yes.
Colin Quinn.
They always put your name. They always put your name in it.
Yeah. Why do you do that?
I don't know, but that's a given.
Yeah.
Where you're supposed to always try to get your name in it.
So, Like a lot of things don't do that. I mean, it's not Robert Vaughn.
Those are called classy. Those are called classy things.
Robert Vaughn, Man from U.N.C.L.E. You know, they don't
exactly.
It's not called that.
That's called classy, understated things. We're talking about comedy.
We're talking about show business. We're talking about show
Yeah.
business. That's what we're
So
talking about.
nobody can ever say, "Hey, that unconstitutional. Wouldn't it be great if this guy did it?" You're like, "Nope." Unless his name is Colin Quinn, it wouldn't be.
It's like Ted Neely as Jesus Christ Superstar. You know, there can really only be one of them. I don't care how many times they restage the show. There's one Jesus, as far as I'm concerned. It's Ted Neely. All right, so tell me about the framers of the Constitution. Then, what did you learn about them when you went to school?
When I went to school, I learned nothing about them. But I mean, literally, I don't think we discussed that. You know, I went to school in Brooklyn back in the early '70s. It was a touchy subject in the. Mostly black and Puerto Rican schools I went to. So I don't think they really brought up the Founding Fathers tour. Not that anyone would listen anyway. People were too busy, there was all kinds of felonious things going on. So it wasn't really a conducive environment to learning. Lord knows I wasn't interested, and neither was anybody else, it seemed.
So James Madison didn't come up that much.
No, he did not. Nobody's name came up.
So when you started studying and preparing for the show, what did you learn about the framers?
I learned that the framers were... they were like a few geniuses, and the rest of them were just guys who were trying to go along to get along. They all take credit for being geniuses, and most of them weren't. But I learned that Jefferson. I like the fact that Jefferson, John Adams, all these guys weren't even there.
Right, exactly. They were writing
John
letters.
Hancock, Patrick Henry wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
George Mason wouldn't sign it. So he wouldn't even sign it at the end. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. All the people that walked out. All the fighting that went on. Rhode Island doesn't show up. New Hampshire comes 8 weeks late. So it's interesting. But also the big one is that the press was not allowed in the whole time.
Right.
That's a big thing.
Secret government.
That's an interesting thing.
Well, I wonder if that was for the good or for the bad. I mean, I wonder if they would have been able to be. I mean, I'm with the press, so I'm in favor of the press being everywhere. But I wonder if they would have been able to be even as honest as they managed to be with each other if there was even more scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole problem, isn't it? The problem with the press is on the one hand you need them to keep people honest. On the other hand, when the press is around, you're going to tend to be less honest, especially now because you all you need is that little sound bite and you're out for life. So it's kind of a contradiction. It's kind of a tough thing. These are the kind of things that never get addressed because nobody cares to address. We just get on this roller coaster, it seems like, and then all these things that need to be discussed with any kind of thought just get pushed aside or they just get steamrolled aside by everybody else,
Well, at a certain point at the convention, too, I think it became making it work and coming up with a document that everybody could approve or that they could get significant enough support for to accomplish ratification began to outweigh some of those lofty principles that were articulated in the Declaration of Independence. It was more, I mean, didn't it at a certain point become, who's going to go for this? We got to give them this in order to get that.
Right. That's exactly what it was. See, now you're making me depressed about the whole show because you're right. All the compromise stuff, but that was the whole. I guess the only positive side of that would be okay. So that's what you get. You get, all these compromises because that's what our government is based on is compromise.
Well, you're going to be in Connecticut, and we should actually mention that once again. You'll be in Connecticut, specifically December 13th. December 13th, 8 p.m. Well, I was going to say we call ourselves the Constitution State. As you look around at the license plates, while you're here, it'll say, and we can talk about why that is. But we really also are the Compromise State. We had the Connecticut Compromise, and one of our three delegates was one of the guys who proposed the 3/5 Compromise. Roger Sherman, I think, and James Wilson were the two guys who first proposed. Right. So talk about the 3/5 Compromise. Do you talk about that in the show?
No, I talk about racial relations today based on the 3/5 Compromise.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in that. I'm more interested in the resonation of it all than I am the actual. You know what I mean? Like this show is more about how we are the way we are now based on it. But the 3/5 Compromise it was the only way they. People always think it means black people are 3/5 of a person, but it was like that's going to count 3/5 towards the vote for Congress.
Right. Your representation in Congress is based partly on your slave population, but only at a 3/5 rate. And really, from a moral perspective, they should have done it the opposite way. You should have lost 3/5 of a vote for every slave that you had in your state.
Right.
You should have lost. So it would have been some states would have barely existed when it was all over. It was like, sorry, North Carolina, you got too many slaves. You know,
Right,
you
right,
can't even
right.
have one congressman, all right? Too many slaves. You shouldn't get extra congressmen for having slaves. That's not right, right?
Right. But like I say in the show, it's like that was the first compromise, which was on slavery, because the North went there to get rid of slavery too. They were like, we're getting rid of slavery. It's immoral, you know? And they sold that out quickly.
Right.
Once again, that's one of the big compromises, which is like, oh my God, we're going to leave unless they give it up. And it sounds like we're not giving it up. They're like, okay, we'll stay and talk for a while. You know what I mean? So that's already, you have a big compromise, you know?
So how do you feel that does play out into contemporary racial relations? How does that show up?
I don't think does that even have to be a question at this point?
Not
Everybody
really.
knows there's certainly black and white tension in this country that's unresolved, to put it mildly.
No, I'd noticed, actually. It comes up now and then. Well, let me tell you a few other things about Connecticut. So
You've been to New Haven lately?
Yeah,
Listen,
I know. I've been to New Haven. Yeah.
I'm trying to make Connecticut reference.
Right.
You know.
Well,
Gun waving New Haven.
I'm going to help you with your Connecticut references. All right. So here's some Connecticut problems with the Constitution. First of all, one of our 3 delegates, William Samuel Johnson, did not even support independence. He was actually opposed to the war against England, not in favor of independence from England. But, you know, he sort of waited that whole thing out, and then he thought, okay, I'll go to the convention. I mean, I might as well, say something now that we did this. And then one of our other delegates, Oliver Ellsworth, was apparently a big proponent of the name United States, which, when you think about it, it had been mentioned before. It had been mentioned in other documents. But, is that good a name, United States? United States? Say it a few times. United States of America?
Right.
They couldn't have come up with a better name than that?
First of all, I think that was also that one of those things that they wrote in. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like they still would get. That's why our state and federal conflict still goes on, because it said that name says we're a country, but we're not just a country. These are all individual states, and it's sort of our philosophical look at we're all people, and every person has individual rights, just like every state does, but we're also a collective. So it's a very contradictory. It's hard to manage this thing,
Yeah,
so in a way, it is a good name, even though it's a crummy name. I know what you're saying. It's clunky, as they say in show business nowadays.
It's clunky.
For everything.
Yeah, it feels conditional, and maybe it actually contains some of those irresolvable problems that you're talking about, too.
That's
long
correct.
As we're a United States of America, then we're not quite a united America. We're still this bunch of states. So I would say,
that was it, yeah.
I would say if we're going to have the occasional, like every 20 years, take the temperature, reevaluate the Constitution, I would look at the name too. I would leave that question open, because you could get, go ahead. You have an idea right now?
How about Championo?
Championo. Yeah, something that ends in O would be nice. Like Delio, is a nice name. And they now have companies that'll do that for you too. They'll just come in there and they'll write stuff on a grease board, and brainstorm, spitball some ideas. Because I bet you they didn't really do. I don't think they did that at the Constitutional Convention. I don't think they had a chalkboard there, just writing down. Okay, somebody else just say first thing on your mind, just say it, as a name. It was like United States of America. That's the only thing anybody had.
I like Golden Palace.
Golden Palace? Would people think we were a Chinese restaurant? We could be the Golden Palace that doesn't deliver.
But it's funny you say, yeah, it really is literally a Chinese restaurant. It's funny you say that, because my whole theory is that this country's going to break up in a relatively soon time. And the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is like United States. And the way they broke up, that's how I feel this country's going to break up. So United States may be gone soon, yes. You may get your wish.
So, but it won't be just like Texas seceding. It's going to be a bigger thing than that?
More than Texas. It's going to be it's probably going to break up like the SEC, the Big Ten, Big East, I don't know, the ACC. I mean, I could see it breaking up into like 8 places.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me nervous, because Connecticut right now is in this really crap athletic conference. I just feel like we're going to get lumped in with like other states that nobody wants. We'll be New England?
Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah. No, the ones that have to – the tough ones are like blue places in red states and red places in blue states, like Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. They're going to have a problem. Charleston, South Carolina. These are like blue mentality, only in the middle of the red states, And the same goes, I guess, for like orange counties in California, but they're going to have to be part of the blue state, even though they're red mentality, So it's a very, it's going to be a tough breakup, but it's going to have to happen, I think,
It also might be the kind of thing where more like corporate America, where you might acquire one thing and then spin off part of it. So maybe Texas, secedes along with Oklahoma and Arkansas and a few other things, and then they'll spin off Austin. Just find some other taker for it. I mean, maybe sort of get rid of the stuff that you've got that doesn't really fit with what you're trying to do.
That's very good. Yeah. Very good.
Some law firm's going to make a lot of money doing that too.
That's true. Yeah. No, I think that could happen. But I do feel like this country's going to break up. I'm not even. I mean, it's funny you say United States. I talk about in the show like that. That's our name. So what? That doesn't mean we'll just change our name. Because you're right, and I do think that it does say something when you say we're united, but we're still individuals. Like it's deliberate, but it's also now it's not working for. The thing is, everybody keeps trying to get other people to think the way they think they should to think what's correct, and it's like that's not the way it works. The whole point of this country is you don't tell me how to think, you don't tell me what to do. That's the only. If everything else in this country doesn't work for you, you have that. So. That's why I think it's inevitable it's going to be a breakup because you're not going to tell people, no, you're wrong. Because they're like, no, I don't think I'm wrong.
So maybe the new names of these new territories will be based on who the people in them think is right. I mean, you might have like the Limbaugh Republic or something.
That's correct.
Yeah. The people, they'll be named after the people that the people in the territories actually are willing to listen to and accept.
Ted Cruz, Valley, whatever it's called. I don't know.
Yeah. It would be a valley anyway. We know that. It wouldn't be a peak. And maybe we'll just, rather than New England, we might be like New Kennedy or something, I mean, I think the Kennedys are kind of the thing that maybe unites the New England states now.
It's funny. There was a comedian named Joe Yannetti, and he's still around. I shouldn't say there was. But anyway, Joe Yannetti from Boston, and he used to have a whole routine. He goes, well, I don't understand why we call ourselves New England. He goes, I thought you would have called ourselves F England, He goes, F, and he goes, F Hampshire, F York, F Jersey. He goes, well, everybody already says that anyway, F Jersey.
I like that idea. We're talking to Colin Quinn about his show, Colin Quinn, Unconstitutional. We'll be back after this.
So I can claim I'm going back from where I came, oh, New England. I'm going back to New England. I'm leaving FLA.
All right, we're talking to Colin Quinn. He's actually coming to Connecticut, to the Constitution State, as we're called, on Friday, December 13th at the Infinity Hall.
Because you guys invented the Constitution.
We invented the Constitution, the Fundamental Orders. You know about that, huh?
Yes, sure.
Fundamental Orders is kind of a nice name.
Yeah, Fundamental Orders is a great name, actually.
It sounds like underwear or something. It doesn't sound entirely like a document.
It sounds like irrevocable.
It does.
Fundamental Orders.
Now, the Fundamental Orders, however, were very, very theocratic. I mean, they were all about the liberty and purity of the gospel of our Lord Jesus and stuff. One of the things about Connecticut is it was an unbelievably theocratic state. And it was, even after the Constitution was ratified, the Congregationalist Church in Connecticut was still the established church of the state until 1818. We were a theocracy until 1818. But this must be something you deal with a lot. I mean, not specifically that, but this must be something you deal a lot with in the show, is sort of the role of religion, the separation of church and state, which is also a phrase that comes out of Connecticut's theocratic past. I can tell you about that, too. But what do you say in the show about religion? Well, how do you sort of draw the line from the Constitutional Convention to modernity?
I don't even mention separation of church and state the entire – oh, yeah, I do at the end. What am I saying? I have a little clever – remark about it. I don't know if I'd call that in-depth humor, but but basically I cover freedom of worship as far as what that meant to people at the time, how it was the only fun you could possibly have because the world was so boring. People came to worship on Sunday. It was like the big time. That was your big social occasion. So it was more than just worship. It was just you had to get out of the house. You had to get away from the fields and away from the dark because there's no electricity. And once a week you get to this place, the guy's throwing snakes around. People are speaking in tongues. It's like they give you the tough love lecture. Like you need it. It was therapy. It was going to the movies and therapy. It was everything. Facebook, checking up on your neighbors and your relatives. It was everything combined. That's why it was so important,
The throwing the snakes around probably was mostly in the South.
Yeah, that was probably most of the South.
Way too cold up here to throw the snakes around. The snakes are too sluggish here. They don't even.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I don't even think they have snakes in the north.
We have a snake or two. We're not snakeless.
Water snakes, really, but not good ones.
No, we don't have the kind that you can really incorporate into your worship.
I mean, it is kind of interesting that that Connecticut did have this whole. First of all, the theocratic thing. That's why they have so many beautiful churches too. The other thing, the weird thing about Connecticut is that the churches look like the houses. And then look like the banks. When Rip Torn got arrested, nowhere else could you get away with saying, I broke into a bank because I thought it was my house, except Connecticut. Because the houses and banks and churches all look the same. And they're all beautiful.
It's true. I hadn't really thought about that. And I hadn't thought about the Rip Torn incident in quite some time.
No, it's foremost on my mind. I played his son on Larry Sanders' show, so of course it's always in my mind.
Oh, that's right. You did. Oh, wow. Well, the other thing I was going to say about the Connecticut theocratic thing is that this sort of does tie a little bit into the Constitutional Convention. You sort of wonder what their idea of religious liberty was. I mean, we certainly use the Establishment Clause a certain way in this country now, but probably their idea of religious liberty was, let me do whatever I want to do, but basically that's a certain kind of Christianity. I mean, they probably weren't thinking about how incredibly diverse this country was going to become.
No, they knew. They said you could be whatever religion you want. It says it right there, Presbyterian, Lutheran, or or
all of
Methodist,
those, all of
Methodist, anyone, any religion that existed was fine.
And actually, in Connecticut, you had to get a permit to be even those. You basically had to get a permit until 1818 to be like a Baptist or a Quaker or something like that, because supposedly you had to pay money to the Congregationalist Church. It was the law, and if you wanted to tithe or give donations to somebody else, you had to do paperwork and prove that you were a paying Baptist. Which, anyway, it's a long story.
You had to get a license to be a Jew until 1905. No, but there were Jews in New York, at least in the 1700s, and even the 1600s, maybe, I don't know. But so I mean, obviously, it was a place where people felt like, hey, maybe I can do something here. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
So obviously, yeah, like you said, nobody was even thinking in those terms, though, outside of some form of Christianity. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. That's what it meant.
I mean, when the Catholics came over, they almost had a heart attack in the 1840s when the Irish came over. They're like, what the hell's this?
We're talking to Colin Quinn right now. He's bringing Colin Quinn Unconstitutional to the Infinity Hall and Bistro in Norfolk, Connecticut on December 13th. We want you to be there for that. And this is his exploration into the Constitution and kind of what came after the Constitution. So you don't go like amendment through amendment, or the clause by clause through the Constitution, do you?
No. I mean, I feel like now I actually probably could, but it was my whole goal is to make it entertaining. So, for me to actually go into legal, into each legal thing, it would have been a different kind of show.
You can't do 15 minutes on the Commerce Clause.
No, actually, I do. It's funny you said that, Colin, because the one thing I do 15 minutes on is the Commerce Clause. But it's not, anybody who's a constitutional expert will be like, you could have gone so much deeper into here, you could have gone so much deeper into that. But it's more of an overview type thing. It's like my world history show. It's like the humor has to come first. And like I said, to me, this show is about how this document created our personality, which I've somehow convinced myself is true now, because you have to make yourself legally, you have to believe that stuff or else you can't really do it, And so I actually believe like each part of the document created what we are, from the Commerce Clause being a business country to freedom of speech being a country where everybody has to put in their 2 cents. It is kind of I've made it a psychological result, is that our personalities in this country are the direct result of that document. That's how I feel like it's a system of laws, like written law document that gave us our national personality.
One thing they have to touch on in that instance is the Second Amendment, and certainly in the sense I was once again doing some reading for the show, I discovered that 2% of the world's constitutions mention any kind of right to bear arms. I think Mexico and Guatemala are the two other countries that have the right to bear arms in their constitution. So, I mean, whatever we are as Americans, that Second Amendment says something about us.
Well, Mexico has that because they get their guns from us, so of course they think that way.
Just another way that we've been copied, basically.
We ship guns to them.
Yeah. Do you think the Second Amendment says something about our character?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we definitely are a country that loves guns. I mean, there's other countries that love guns too, but not certainly not Europe. And it's also interesting because, Springfield Arms, the whole Constitution got started, if you really want to put together things that don't necessarily connect, but I'll connect them right now for no reason. The Springfield Armory, right? Mm-hmm. The Shays Rebellion, which was all the farmers going. It was basically red state, blue states, farmers going against the bankers, complaining about after Revolutionary War. This is like right before the Constitutional Convention. Mm-hmm. They attacked. There was like a rebellion, almost a civil war in Massachusetts, and they were trying to get to the Springfield Armory, which is the first mass production in the world with guns here in this country. Of any mass production of anything, any product, was guns here, Springfield. So they were trying to take over, and that's what finally made everybody go, okay, we need to have a constitutional convention. So it was almost somehow guns are connected with us realizing, we have to have this constitutional convention, or these guys were going to get the guns and try to, there was going to be a civil war.
Colin Quinn, I'll be interested to see this show because one thing that I think you do have a reputation for doing is kind of, as they say, going there. That you often will tackle material that other people are afraid to talk about things that are somehow or other off the grid of political correctness. I credit you, rightly or wrongly, I credit you as having told the first joke after 9/11.
Yes.
And I remember what it was. But perhaps you do too, since it was your joke.
If it's the one I think, which was that about
people saying that they almost died in the World Trade Center.
Right. Everybody had to connect themselves to it. Right.
Yeah. People saying, if I had become a stockbroker instead of running the go-kart track in Utica,
right.
That I would have died. That was the first joke I remember anybody telling after 9/11. And I don't know, did you tell that with some trepidation, or did you feel like, well, this is one of the jobs of comedy? I mean,
I had 20 minutes on the 9/11 thing. I had relatives that died. I mean, I knew people that died, and I had friends and relatives that died, firemen and stuff, and in my family and people I grew up with. But it's like anything else. Where are you coming from? If you're trying to be slick, if you're trying to make jokes about 9/11 just to show you're edgy, then I think people are like, oh, so you're just trying to be like, hey, I'll break through. I'll break barriers. I'm edgy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If your intention is just to do that, then I don't like that. I don't like that type of humor myself, where you're just trying to be. I mean, of course, we're all trying to be edgy comedians. I mean, but if you're trying to do it because you're trying to discuss something in public, in the public discourse, then I don't see why there should be any problem with any subject. But people do get mad at certain hot button issues. People do try to get slick and get in there, be passive-aggressive and say, I don't like that people are doing this. And it's like, fine, but be upfront about it, then it's fine, Yeah. If you're upfront about what you're talking about, I don't know how anybody could have a problem with it, but people do, of course. Just they hear any buzzword, they have a heart attack,
For example, I know one thing you've talked about is that there is a very different approach between the way that we joke about President Bush and the way that we joke or do not joke about President Obama.
Oh my God! I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I say in the show, I say the joke about President Obama for the past 5 years because people want to be political, so you can't acknowledge to yourself. We don't make jokes about our president of the United States. It's just strange in a country, right? So people go, "Yeah, you hear the joke about President Obama? What? Joe Biden's an ass!" Ha ha ha! And everyone laughs like, "Ooh, that was perfect." Because it's about the president, but it's not really. But it's also because obviously in show business there's a certain idealization of him. You know what I mean? Like people either demonize or lionize him, and it's very strange. In showbiz, they lionize him, so it's like anybody that makes a joke about him, they're like, that's subconsciously racist. So I'm going to prove I'm not racist by treating him differently than I would any of the white presidents and not say anything about him. So there's a lot of, I don't know if it's hypocrisy or contradiction, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I understand people wanted him to be this hope for them, like they wanted, like it was more representational. It was almost racist to make him into this quote-unquote magic Negro fictional character that's supposed to be above all other politicians instead of just another politician. I mean, to expect somebody to be really good when they're okay or to expect somebody to be really evil, they're both in the same category,
Well, I think also, I mean, it really is odd when there's an exception to that rule. I mean, the real rule is that politicians are the most available figures of ridicule and the fairest figure. I mean, when you decide to run for office, they should issue you some kind of laminated card explaining to you it's now okay for everybody to make fun of you on virtually any basis. You no longer are entitled to any claim of human dignity, and
that's right.
And everybody's going to do that, and you really aren't going to be allowed to complain about it either, because that's really kind of written into the fabric of at least our American attitude towards politicians.
That's correct. And why then would we expect the best and brightest? What kind of rational, intelligent person would put themselves through that? We've set it up so we cannot get the best people for that job because they'd be fools to fall for that.
Well, I think the other thing with Obama, I sort of wonder also, and this is going to a fairly dark and serious place, but, I think there's the other, I always think about Von Meter. I grew up with Von Meter's incredible First Family album, and it really was a comic masterpiece. I mean, I don't really like a lot of sort of political satirical humor that's I don't really think the Capitol steps are that funny and things like that. But this was really, exactly. But this was really funny. I mean, I don't know. I listened to it as a kid. Maybe I'm inflating it now, but I think it was really funny. And he was over on November 23rd of 1963. Not only that, but he was really almost retroactively seen to have committed some horrible dark sin, as if he was supposed to know that this was going to happen.
Right.
And I kind of,
what are you relating it to?
Well, I kind of wonder if people sort of look at Obama as a similar shining moment in American life, and that somehow or other, if you violated that moment, if you did, if it was something that people waited for such a long time, the idea that we would someday have an African American president seems so unlikely, that if you violated this perfect Edenic moment where finally, we put some of our 3/5 of a human being passed behind us, if you said something bad about it, you jinx it somehow.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, but you're 100% right. That's definitely part of it. But as a comedian, if there's anybody that's supposed to not obey the polite societal norm, or at least it's supposed to be us. So I guess that's a good point. But it just infuriated me when everybody in show business suddenly became these wide-eyed innocents. That's okay for here's the elitist snob of show. That's okay for the public. But you guys shouldn't be like that.
Right, because it's supposed to be like Lear and his fool. The fool's the one person who can talk back to Lear.
Exactly.
And if the fool decides that Lear is too sacrosanct to be talked back to, then who have we got? Who's left at that point?
Yeah, that's well put. I wish I'd thought of that.
Oh, steal it. Go ahead. I don't care. We're talking to Colin Quinn right now. And the one thing that I'm wondering, too, is whether or not some of that's going to change. I think some of it has already changed vis-a-vis Obama. And with the problem with the website, maybe that's just sort of because it plays so neatly into something that comedians in 2013 joke a lot about anyway. Digital things that don't work. But I also wonder whether you would count that as a joke around Obama instead of a joke about Obama.
Oh, definitely. Well, look, Bush got every joke he deserved, obviously. But even then, it's sort of like people hammer in a certain way. With Bush, they'd be like, well, that's the Bush. Not even the comedians, but in general, people like, well, Bush set that tone so that Abu Ghraib could exist. Whereas Obama, they're like, well, the NSA is a renegade. Some renegades are going crazy in the NSA. It's never, they just try to move him away.
Yeah.
It's a strange psychological, linguistic thing.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of like, well, I don't know what those drones are doing killing people over there.
Right. And even now with the website, it's like, hey, listen, I check it. And everybody's like, all right, that's cool,
That's Colin Quinn you're hearing. The interview was recorded yesterday, so don't call in. Even if you have something really fascinating to say, you can email me at Colin, Colin, at WNPR.org. But don't call in. The interview is recorded. We'll take a quick break with this, and then we'll be back with that.
Life's getting kind of rough, and things getting kind of tough. And things just ain't going like we wanna. Well, we'll just blame it on Obama.
I think it should also say in the Constitution, if someone named Jared loses 35 pounds eating Subway, he gets to be a Supreme Court justice. Today's show was produced by Betsy Kaplan and me. Our interns are Albert Gordon and Garrett Connolly. Greg Hill appeared in the introduction and tweets for us at WNPR Colin. The part of Bill Curry was played by Ben Franklin. For photos, articles, links, and videos of the Faith Middleton Show staff rapping about the Equal Protection Clause, check out our website, WNPR.org. Tomorrow, a show about blood pressure. And now, back to the Collins.
First of all, I want to mention again, Colin Quinn will be here with his show, Unconstitutional. Now, it's just you and a table, right? This isn't one of these busted truck tours where there's dancers in a pit orchestra and stuff like that.
It's a table and a big mouth and a deluded mind. That's really all you need in comedy. And you don't even need the table. All you need is a mic. You don't even need lights. All you need is a big mouth and a microphone in comedy.
Do you essentially do the show the same way every night, or does the audience begin to shape the show a little bit?
The audience has definitely shaped the show so far. I mean, I've been doing it, it changes. Plus, it changes every night because I keep thinking, how once they always say when you're looking for an air conditioner, you suddenly notice all the ads for an air conditioner.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a show on the Constitution, you start noticing all these things that relate to it. And like I said, I really am convinced a national personality is based on that Constitution, And I keep finding evidence every day,
Give me an example.
The fact that we don't hate millionaires the way everybody else hates millionaires. The fact that we still look at millionaires. The rest of the world is like, millionaires we hate. Over here, there's a little bit of like, good for him. Hey, that's how it's set up. He got his. You know what I mean?
Well, I think over here, there's also people nurse this idea that against all odds, against all possible odds, it could be them. I used to do a talk radio show. I was the only left-of-center host on an predominantly Limbaugh-carrying, conservative radio station. I was the only left-of-center host. And so I encountered that attitude a lot. And people who call up, and it was clear they're making $40,000 a year, but they're really concerned that the taxes on the rich don't become too severe. And I would kind of probe that mentality a little bit. It seemed to me that they sort of harbored this notion that pretty soon that was going to be them.
Yeah, that's the beauty. I mean, and the truth of the matter is you have a chance it could be you here. Even if it's not a high chance. I always say it's like I used to do a whole thing about our country and a casino because obviously there's a lot of similarities. And one of the similarities is when you go to that casino, you throw your money down, even though most people are walking out broke. Once in a while, somebody hits it big. People like a casino. You know what I mean? Like Las Vegas exists for a reason. Even though you're like, this is a ripoff, and even though you'll lose, but you're like, damn it, that guy, look at him. That son of a bitch hit big. So it's kind of that mentality that made our country the fun country.
Well, that's why I'm kind of enjoying this current Pope Francis, who, he talks pretty tough about the rich. It's the name like Colin Quinn, I'm assuming some of your upbringing was Catholic. He kind of makes you want to come back, if it's going to be like that. Yeah.
See, the Catholic Church always got a bad rep because, the leaders and the priests involved in, scandalous activities with nubile young boys. But meanwhile, everybody ignored the fact, because it's easy to attack the Catholic Church. Once again, speaking politically correct, of course, everybody just attacked them full force for the past 30 years. But nobody ignored the fact that nuns have been doing most of the charity, and these nuns have been like saints, even the mean ones. I mean, the nuns that were in America teaching in schools, yes, a lot of them destroyed everyone's self-esteem. But I'm saying the ones that went to all these other countries that worked with the poor all these years did do a lot of great stuff. So it's good that this guy's actually saying, hey, look, our thing is to work with the poor. Let's not give the rich a pass on this, So it is good. I think it's great that he's getting back to what the Catholic Church, back when I liked it in the late 1400s. When the Catholic Church meant something to me. From Thomas Aquinas to Vlad the Impaler, I don't know, whoever that guy was, to right after the Inquisition.
I was going to say, you have to get past the Inquisition before you can really sort of get started having any fun at all.
Yeah, they're going up to people going, what part of Christ died for your sins do you not understand?
I'm with you on the nuns, by the way. We did a whole show here on nuns with nuns as guests, and all of them were amazing. One of them I was inappropriately in love with by the end of the conversation.
That sounds kind of interesting.
It could have been a sort of a Bridges of Madison County type novel, except she didn't seem that. She's already married.
What? I know she's married to God.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. She said, "Look, I'm with somebody. I'm sorry." It was awkward, but we got past it. Hey, you mentioned casinos, and obviously the other thing you probably know about Connecticut is we have really large casinos here.
That's correct.
In Connecticut, and I've been watching this whole conversation unfold up in Massachusetts, where they are now considering getting casinos. And one of the things that struck me is, I think there are only really two great American stories. One of them is The Great Gatsby, and the other one is The Music Man. And the music, and in Massachusetts, anywhere the casinos want to go in right now, it's like The Music Man, except Harold Hill is offering to save River City by bringing in a pool hall. It's kind of this is what we have to offer people right now. Your tax base doesn't work anymore. You don't have enough money for your schools. You can't buy trombones for the kids. We'll give you a casino, and then you can. So Vice has inverted itself. So
really good point about The Music Man in general.
Yeah. So, Colin Quinn, I just want to come back to this format that you're working on right now, the kind of one-man show thing. Is this a format that you sort of gradually fallen in love with? You've done all kinds of stuff. Obviously, you did Saturday Night Live. You did.
I feel like a crowd in a theater. A comedy club is set up so that people have to order drinks. Their tables are not facing the front. They're facing each other. So there's going to be some talk. You have to talk to the waitress. In a theater, people can get up and go get a drink. They can get up and go to the bathroom, but they're watching only the show. When it's a nice, beautiful theater, people are they're listening to you the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done nothing my whole life except try to force people to listen to me. It might be the only thing I've tried to achieve, and I've barely achieved that, but it's close enough for me.
Do you feel like you're sort of veering more towards, we now have sort of a whole sort of sub-industry spawned by Spalding Gray of monologists or monologists or something, and guys like Mike Daisey and stuff like that. You feel like you're working in that vein, or do you still feel like a stand-up, assuming that you acknowledge any distinction between those two worlds?
Oh, yeah, I do. I acknowledge the distinction. But, yeah, I still feel like a stand-up, although I'm sure that some stand-ups are bad-mouthing me behind my back saying, yeah, he's not really doing stand-up. I wish I was in this. But, most stand-ups, love and adore me as I do them, as they should. So, I still feel like I'm a stand-up in the sense that if I don't get a laugh for 40 seconds or 45 seconds in my show, I get a little like I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. I got to get my laugh.
Whereas if you're Spalding Gray or Mike Daisey or somebody like that, you can talk for 5-6 minutes.
They can talk and they're like, no, it's about this. But for me, it's about the laughs ultimately. So if I'm not getting laughs, then I start to get a little. Yeah, I feel like it's not what I want to be.
When I was a kid growing up, I loved comedy, and it was one of those things that you sort of had to wait for. Like I would sit through the Ed Sullivan Show with my parents, patiently or not patiently watching Robert Goulet sing or whatever. Right. So they're thinking, when's a comedian coming on? There's going to be a comedian, right? There's a comedian coming on. And I look at now, and it really, you never have to be without comedy if you don't want to. Not only is there Comedy Central, not only are there venues all over the place, but if for some reason or other you feel like, wow, it's been 15 minutes and nobody made me laugh, there are all these podcasts. Does the world of podcasting attract you, either as a guest or as a host?
No, it infuriates me because every comedian has one, and it's like you're watching comedians talk other comedians, and then they have to go on their podcast and talk to them, and it's just too much. And I've been on 30, 40, or 50 of them, I don't know how many, and I'm just like, oh my God, when are people just going to go, hey, we get it, you have a process. We get it. There's hecklers. Who cares, And
it is a little bit like magicians explaining how they do their tricks too. I don't necessarily want to know.
So. Yeah, I think so. Only it's exactly. And once you look at it, you're like, ugh, it's boring. Who wants to hear this nonsense? Ultimately, I feel like, yeah, it's about the work. But I do feel good because I feel like it's definitely made the audience realize that we don't like hecklers. We don't want help. We don't want you jumping in, So I do feel like it's been good for us in that way. But so I feel like it sets a certain type of tone with people that's better for comedians. But ultimately, it's like there's so many, it's overkill. Jesus.
Right. They could just post a sign telling people that.
They do, but nobody listens to it.
Well, listen, it's been great talking to you. It's been great listening to you. We've been talking to Colin Quinn. The 13 Colonies tour is underway. How many colonies have you done so far?
All of them.
All of them? Are we the 13th colony?
No, I already did. I did Connecticut once, but now I'm doing, I guess this is part 2 of the 13 colonies,
I did Connecticut once. Sounds like sexual boasting. I hope you don't feel that way.
I did Connecticut once, and let me tell you, they asked me to come back. So what about that? Right. Are you going to come to the show?
Absolutely, Colin Quinn.
Nice, Colin.
There. We'll have a Colin to Colin meeting.
We should have a meeting afterwards and talk about the show, and you can say, you can add your ideas to it because obviously you do know your constitutional stuff.
All right. I'll give you notes. All right, Colin Quinn. Great to talk to you. We'll look forward to having you here on November 13th. Colin Quinn. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
I'm Kyone Wolf. You know what's wrong with Obama jokes? His supporters don't think they're funny, and everybody else don't think they're jokes. Am I right? You see,